Yo, what's poppin', Bagel Bros, and welcome back to another Patreon rant. If you want one of these for yourself, be sure to give me $10 on Patreon. This one comes from KD Pack, who says, "Rant about my Ashita no Joe video. It's flopping, but it's a 70s anime recap/analysis video where I talk about obscure Japanese athletes and blowing my nose." That is indeed an accurate analysis of the video, even the blowing his nose part, which, by the way, I should have this video linked in the description of this one. His channel is Anime Rufus, and it is a good video. I'd even go so far as to say it is Anime Rufus's best video. And also, by the way, he's no longer Anime Guru. I know I called him that in all the last rants I did on him, but it's Anime Rufus now because the person who he based his channel name on, MMA Guru, has a lot of questionable beliefs, and Rufus didn't want to be seen, inspiring his channel name off of that, and so switched it, which is a very funny tangent, but it's also kind of related to this video, because the main angle that Rufus takes when it comes to talking about Ashita no Joe is that he is extremely into MMA and at one point was into boxing as well. He's a huge combat sports fan. He's shown me brutal knockouts in MMA before over a video call. And so this has been known. And he uses that knowledge in order to talk about Ashita no Joe, where Ashita no Joe, he talks about the entire anime, spoils its ending, which I didn't know, and it actually seems like a really thematically interesting ending. I won't talk about I won't spoil specifics here, but he does a really good job of selling the show as a really interesting watch. I definitely want to check it out at some point. So the main way in which it connects to, his general knowledge of combat sports is talking about the physical risks that fighters face when fighting. There's this brain condition called CTE where you sustain brain damage over a very long period of time. It's sort of like death by 1,000 cuts for your brain, where it slowly, your mental processes lag. You start, you have memory loss. It's horrible. It sounds like absolute torture. And it's something that people fighting in combat sports face on a regular basis because they are putting their bodies and minds at risk at all times during combat sports. And there's a lot of discussion. Rufus goes really into the nitty-gritty of okay, here's interesting aspects of combat sports, like the respect and intimacy fighters have towards each other, where this is a respectful duel, at least in theory, where you are in sanctioning it in this way, you're giving the opponent permission to hurt you, and how it is this humbling experience. And he, that's a big part of the character arc of Joe himself in the show, where he goes from this just, takes things as they come, doesn't respect anybody, beats the shit out of anybody he feels like it kid, to a mature, reasonable adult. Reasonable in every sense except his reckless pursuit of combat sports, because even though, at the end, I wish Rufus went a bit more into this. I'm not sure how much the show focuses on, the damage he's receiving from, as the thumbnail suggests, the damage. I'm not sure how much the show fixates on it, but there's one part where Rufus recounts that a character in the show who Joe is about to face says that it's already too late for him. He has already sustained too much brain damage. His movements have slowed and dulled because of it. He can tell just by looking at Joe that he is not all there because of what he's sustained from doing boxing. And I guess my biggest issue with the video, in tying in with this, is that it is a bit recappy. There are, a lot of the video, I'd say about half of the video is just recapping various parts of the show, and not all of it feels completely earned when the main angle that Rufus takes, once again, is this extremely specific one of, hey, like, this, here's what brain damage in boxing is like, and this show does a good job of representing it. Which is super interesting to me. I love hearing about combat sports in that way. But it's like, I feel like more of the video should have been tailored to just focus in on that, because that is the interesting part. But instead, there is a lot of recapping various arcs, and I get it. Like, you need to recap things to a certain extent. I'm extremely familiar with it. I've done Annie too, but not all of it feels entirely earned, especially like near the beginning of the video. I think is where it's at its worst, because we get the entire we recap, hey, here's Ashita, here's Joe as this guy, who doesn't respect anyone, and like, okay, we need to set that up, that makes sense. But then he goes into a lot of his encounters, how he goes to prison, meets this one guy, it's like, I'm not sure how much of this needed to be explained in such detail, because that is like 10 minutes of the video building up to the point where Joe, I'm not going to spoil what happens, but there's a big pivotal moment in both the show and the video, and I feel like at that point the video sort of begins, making these interesting points about combat sports and Ashita no Joe. But before that, it can feel a bit thin on the ground in terms of actual analysis. So, I guess the last thing I wanted to cover is my perspective on combat sports, given as that is one of the big subjects of the video, because I'm passingly familiar with them. As a kid, my dad is really, or at least was, really into boxing, and I remember him showing us clips of it as a kid, and it was something he really tried to get us into. And at least for me, I never got into it that much. And as an adult, I almost see the entire thing. This sounds really cynical, because Rufus does such a good job of conveying the respect and reverence he has for it. Like, I completely understand why he's into it. And just as a side tangent, because I forgot to bring it up earlier, like, there was this one moment where he was talking about how one of the characters needed to cut an extreme amount of weight, like 15 pounds, to make weight for a fight. And I was, he literally has to tie up the faucets in his house in order to stop himself from being tempted to get a glass of water, because even getting water will make him weigh too much for this fight. And I was thinking to myself, that seems a bit unrealistic. That seems a bit exaggerated. And then Rufus is like, hey, actually, this is like pretty similar to how it actually goes. Like, people go to unhealthy extents to make weight for fights. Oh God, I keep messing up my words. But like, it was interesting to hear from me, because I'd always just assumed like, oh yeah, you have these opponents that are similarly, of a similar weight class, and you just like find people who are already in those weight classes. But I guess it makes sense, because you can't always have people in the same weight class. Like, sometimes you do, like, there's probably not enough people around who are of nearly the exact same weight in order to always have that neat pairing, which was eye-opening to me. And, once again ties into the broader themes of the video. But it's because of stuff like that, where you go to extremely unhealthy extremes to put on this spectacle. I am extremely cynical towards combat sports. And Rufus does share some of that, I wouldn't say cynicism, but like, he does ask himself near the end of the video, are combat sports immoral? Is supporting this even right to begin with? And I don't have a good answer to that per se, but what I will say is that the world would be a better place if we didn't have them. I firmly believe that. I think that is an almost undeniable thing, because it is needlessly damaging for no reason, really. And I understand that it is an extremely humbling experience for the people involved, but at the same time, to me, it's so stupid. Why would you put your life on the line for this? And Rufus once again goes into that, where it's often reasons of poverty, and sometimes you're just really into the sport, and like, why deny an adult of their ability to get into this if that's what they truly desire, which is something that I do understand, but at the same time, it's kind of like, well, it's just not something I could ever see myself getting into. I have too many reservations about how idiotic the entire thing seems to me from an outside perspective. It's so pointless. It is completely pointless violence, and I just can't really get behind it. But because of that, it is interesting to see people who are passionate about it explain why they are. So overall, good video. It is all your stuff that you said about combat sports in general and connecting it to Ashita no Joe, I really liked. Maybe less recap. And also marketing, but that's a given, and I have no idea how you would even begin to make this clickable. I'm not even gonna lie. Alright, that's about it. See ya.